Hello, everyone, and welcome to, I don't know if I call it Hydra tutorial. It's part of Hydra tutorial series, but I want to experiment a little bit with reading Hydra book. Why? So I have been recording intermediate tutorials, and I was wondering if I go to advanced tutorial or is it something else? Do we have more content for intermediate tutorial? I'll just pause it for a bit, and I wanted to come back to the Hydra book. I don't know if you know it, but I'll put the link down below and I will switch to small myself. Well, it's not a physical book, and it's the content wise, I would say it's not as big as a book. It's more like thesis. No, can be a book. I don't know what it is, but it's a collection of pages. It has some write-ups as well, which I added later. It was like originally a big blog post I put on my blog, which I'm not editing, updating so much these days. But then I started to feel like, okay, maybe it has some kind of chapters, and also I wanted to have like different examples, like live examples, so that it's not just about going through the code and the screenshot of it, but you can like interactively play with it. So I kind of developed, which also like this format fed back to the official document of Hydra, well, official quote unquote, which you can go to, for example, it's hydra.ojak xyz, not API, but docs. Then, well, I don't know if this has live examples. Yeah, it has. So it's kind of like it came back to the official one, but originally I think, well, Olivia was doing this kind of experiment as well, but I mainly tried to have this like side by side code and the live example in this, let's say, a book or virtual book. And now it's really like it's quite messy. I added things over the years. I haven't really edited last few years. I think when I was more active, like 2020, I think. But then since then, I've added like a few things, but haven't been doing it so much. And also, the content is quite cryptic, and I thought, okay, maybe like instead of editing it, maybe I can review my own Hydra book and see if I can explain it better, or maybe I learn something out of it by making this series, and also you might learn something. So I think it's a win-win situation, and hopefully this will be like interesting for some of you. And as a prerequisite, it's not like I'm not going to do this as like super advanced topic, but it may be super nerdy. It might involve some math, not sure. But I remember in Hydra book, it kind of assumes that you have some understanding of like also like shader code, maybe a little bit. I try to like make more examples to illustrate what is happening behind the scenes, but I would highly recommend going through the beginner's tutorial first, because I would like assume, I mean, it does explain like really like a step by step like each function and how it works, but my idea is not to like explain how to start coding Hydra by through going this book and in this series, but it's more about like assuming that you already work with Hydra. But the reason why I also like I started this book is that I kind of like always ended up with similar patterns, and I feel like quite a lot of you might share this like issue with like you end up like always like do live coding and improvising, but kind of like always like stuck at something similar. And how to break the pattern, that was like the original intention for me to write this book, to understand like not just like adding more code and make it better, but how to break it down and try to understand it so we can maybe make something a little bit different from how we do as habit. So it has a lot of like resource on the top page, and it's a little bit obsolete. But if you're following this tutorial, I'm sure you can have access to, the beginner's tutorial, intermediate tutorial, and now we're doing this. And again, the link to the Hydra book is in the description, so I highly recommend to also go through that link. And I think it's good to go from the top, which is the textures, no, not the top page, but textures page here. I just had a quick look at it. It's not really new to you, I think, because I think I tried to explain everything in detail in the tutorial series. So I would say I will just skip it, except that, sorry, I'm trying to organize it better. So basically in this texture, it's talking about texture sources, like oscillator is one thing, we know it. Although the code is a little bit funny, so that's something we briefly look at. And then we just talk about, Kalade. Yeah, we did this, making circles, and also these examples are made into square. So if you do Kalade with 99, it makes nice circles, not oval, but we always suffer in this series. And actually, I talk about, how to make the circles look circle, not ovals. So this is the trick that I use. You can also skip window anyways, but this I already talked about it in the series. And yeah, if you do Kaleido 3, maybe something like this, you can have noise as a source as well. Voronoi is another one. It's not so much new things in here. Also I talked about posterize, pixelate. Okay, there's different ways of quantifying the texture, but I already explained these things. Now, only thing I would think useful is that this a little bit unusual way of using OSC. Oh, I love OSC. And why is it important is that I'm using here MathPy. Normally I work with for example, OSC 60 or OSC 30 or OSC 10 because it's handy. But then the problem, quote unquote, is not really a problem if you're just playing with the texture, but sometimes you want to make it make it wrap around, so that it's continuous. The left edge and right edge, they have the same color. So if you repeat it, so for example, what is the unit of OSC? I don't know if it makes sense, but the way it's coded, it's just very arbitrary. It's not OSC has to be this way or that way, but in Hydra it was just coded in a certain way that it's the first parameter of OSC becomes it's a frequency, but if you want to strictly wrap around, so okay, let's see, let's say OSC 30, it looks, I don't know, it's really hard to say if it's actually wrapping around at the left and the right or not. The easiest way to test visually is just to repeat it, repeat X maybe twice, make it side by side and how it looks like, and you can see that it has this discontinuity. And is this a big problem? This can be also interesting to use it as an artifact, but very specific cases we don't want this, and we might go into this very specific cases later. So just saying that if you want to make it wrap, MathPy is a friend. Well, this is not wrapping actually. Yeah, something like this. MathPy times 2 is 1 unit. So this is full circle or full cycle of sine curve. That's exactly what OSC does. And then if you multiply it by 10, for example, you don't see the seam here because it is actually, there is no seam. It's very smooth. So this series is talking about this kind of thing. I'm sorry if you were expecting to make some amazing visuals in 10 minutes. Sorry, I'm not doing this yet, but we might end up something very nice. So let's see how things go. So just saying that, sometimes like OSC with MathPy is important. And I actually use this. Maybe I'm not going to go into that today, but when I'm working with like modulate to change colors, this can be very useful. Okay, so very, very interesting beginning to this series. But let's go to the next topic. So textures, I think there's not much like in here. And geometry, this becomes a little bit more interesting, it seems. But let's see. So shapes. I think I talked about the shape, like this mystery of shapes that is... So for example, like shape default parameter is 3, so it is a triangle, but it's quite natural to think, okay, if it's 4, then it's a quad, or it can be a square in a square screen, but it's a little bit stretched in this case, and 5 and 6 and so on, like pentagon, hexagon, okay, I said it right. So these things, it's quite obvious what it does, but also you can go, okay, so there are two extremes. One is to make it super big, and as we saw, I like to make it like 99 or 999 to make it circle, and it's like, it's an approximation, right? So it's not actually a circle, and if you want to make it like very like close to circle, then you just have to make it big, or I don't know. There's also like this notation like 1e 6. I don't use it because I will probably make syntax error easily. So, but if this is a thing for you, maybe like this can be nice, like just 3 characters and make it like, I don't know, this is equivalent of what, I don't know, but it's like a big number. You can make it even like this, like super super big. But as you see, like visually, like this compared to 999, this like barely you can see the difference. And like I call this a circle. Now there's another end of the spectrum, which is, what if we reduce the number of like this number, and that's like, it becomes like impossible shape, I know. And I think I touched this in the series because it's kind of handy, so I use it, and I highly recommend to use it as well for you. For example, shape 2. What is it? Like 2 sides, but it's impossible, right? It's like, what? On the in the Cartesian space, which I'm very Cartesian, so I'm very sorry for you if you're like thinking me as a queer whatever person. No, that's a joke, but we're talking about like this pixel, like XY Cartesian space, whatever. So shape 2 is impossible, but somehow like it ends up with like this, and it's always nice to try it and discover something new, and this is super useful. Like this is basically what this first paragraph is saying in the Hydra book. And also like you can just use a second parameter, which I think is default 0.3, it is, but you can reduce it to make it thinner and thinner and thinner, like really thin. Like basically you can treat it as a line, right? Or you can make it like thicker, like something like a flag maybe you can make, then maybe like, is 383 actually a third of the space? I'm not sure. But anyways, you can like play around with this parameter, and also the last parameter is the border. So if you want to make it like super sharp edge, then 0 is good. And then if you make it like 0.001, actually you don't see it anymore because it's becoming smaller than a pixel, I think. So, if you happen to, like want to use a line like this, and if you want to like make it like a curve, like easy ways to use modulate, and then put it like OSC here, like we talked about OSC, and then it becomes like a sine curve, which is quite a nice trick. If you are very strict like this, no, it doesn't matter. Okay, anyways, so this kind of thing you can do, and of course you can use like shape or whatever, but I don't know what it does. Okay, it's interesting. I like this like dot here. Maybe it becomes a little bit more visible if I blur the line a bit more. Anyways, so you can play with it with, you know, this shape as a line and modulate it maybe, and you can also like color it later using like a color function and so on, and you can start making some patterns like that is not, you know, just adding things, but using shape too, which is kind of not something people would come up in the first place. Now, okay, so shape 4 is a square, it's quite obvious, and then we have the circle, we talked about it. Now, this is a quite interesting one that is like how to make this kind of like a polka dot that comes later, right? Yeah, polka dot comes later. So there are like different ways to make this pattern, and it's a little bit funny way I was doing it here. I think it's quite not obvious. Okay, let's try it like this. I would have like skipped it, but so this will make, I mean, again, the window is stretched. I'm very sorry. But it makes this alternating square pattern, which is super interesting. The way it works, okay, so maybe this is a little bit too much, like using variables, like n is 4, let's put it inside here, okay, because it's doing this kind of like funny scroll here, and then also like adding this. So what is this in here? Just use this function. So it's a shape 4, 0.4. I mean, this is quite arbitrary, right? It can be like 0.5, whatever you like. And then you repeat it because this shape is just a shape, so you want to repeat it. And what if you scroll this a little bit diagonally so that now and this was like using this kind of like funny variable trick that is using a as a function. I haven't really explained this. I don't know if this is interesting. Basically, you can kind of make a macro. I don't know, macro is the right way that people would understand, but basically it's kind of copying this twice. I mean, you can write it this way, or you can use a variable. And actually, a is not a good name because a conflicts with something else in Hydra. So I don't know, sh, because it's a shape, equals something like this. But then this doesn't actually work in Hydra. You have to use this arrow function notation thingy, and you call it here instead of sh dot. It becomes like sh, like, it's just like other functions, right? Like shape, but like this. So I can do that too. Okay, so actually 0.5 makes it like a chessboard, or whatever you like. And if I don't not to blur the edge, it becomes completely like a chessboard, which is super interesting. I don't have to like use this notation if this is confusing for you. Actually, it's confusing for me. When I was writing the Hydra book, I thought this was nice way to like do it. But for now, I think this is not like, if it's like a 3-line long function, I might do that trick to optimize the reading. But for now, I think it's not that long. So so this is quite interesting, and I can just change these numbers a little bit smaller. Then it becomes more like a dot. But if it's like 0.5, then it's a chessboard. What if it's bigger? Okay, like it's kind of like inverting the color almost. So, and always like you can try different things, right? Okay, I think actually didn't think about this, but it's quite interesting how making this like offset or like different parameters for these each shape, which is not in Hydra book. I just invented now, and it's kind of quite interesting. So that's something to try. And it's also like a good use case of Hydra book is like you just pick some interesting pattern that, you don't have to read it. You can just like pick, okay, this pattern is nice, and then you start editing, just like how I'm doing now. Although I'm trying to go from the top to the bottom, but you don't have to. You just like scroll and find interesting one, try it, and adapt it in your use case. And I hope that this will inspire you to do something, different from your habit. Now, so there's one way of like making this pattern, which I'm actually quite happy with how this looks like. And of course, like as I said, you can just add color to it, 1, -1, 1 or something to, change the color, and you can play with it. But also like the color itself was not the topic of this chapter, so I don't really go deep in the Hydra book. But, as a reader, that this is like the use case I'm imagining from you, that you might do this, and then you want to do like modulate. It becomes more like like a habit kind of thing. But yeah, you can make some interesting patterns. I made something nice, so I'm really happy. And anyways, I go back to this, and even like go back to the chessboard. But then I actually talk about like how to make a chessboard in another way. And I think this is something I discovered later, and it's much shorter, which is super interesting. I found how to do it, and I can let me just recreate this to kind of wrap up, but from my memory, like not like function by function, but like how I would do it. So I start with another shape. Let's just keep it like this. And the idea of this version of chessboard is that I want to use the repeat function, but in a way that, so I think I haven't explained, but repeat function is a funny one that, so for example, I do 4, 4, it's 4 by 4, 4 like X and Y, that you can make repeat. That just I did in the previous example as well. But it's also taking third and fourth parameters, and this makes an offset. So for example, if I do 0.50, let's say, and this already is making something very close to what I want. Now, what it does is that repeat, so the third parameter is affecting the X direction, but it's alternately, that's the word. Oh my gosh, English. Alternatingly, I don't know. So every other line, it's offset by this parameter. And I think it will wrap if it's 1, it's not interesting. So it goes from like 0.1, 0.2 up to 1. It goes around. You can see that this is like moving a little, and 0.5 is the midway. Maybe I can, and this is like not dependent on these values, right? So if I make it bigger, grid 0.5 is, well, actually dependent that it goes halfway of one cycle, whatever. We were talking about cycles today, it seems like with OSC and so on. But anyways, so this is close to what I want, but the difference between this grid, I mean, okay, I can implement this scaling so that we're happy with is height, I think height divided by width. So it's actually, is it width divided by height or height divided by width? I'm not really sure anymore, but let's see. So if I make it, so maybe it's width divided by height. Or is it inner width, inner height, debugging time? So it doesn't matter. I think it may be this. Okay, this is right. So if we make it into square, what we observe is, this is a little bit funny. Like this, if this is a texture you want, this works for you, but compared to this, it's not the same. And I think there's too much space between the rows. Like if you scan horizontally, there's too much space between them. I want actually to have no space between them because we're talking about chessboard. We want this row to be like bumped a little bit, well, quite further, so that this square to be connected with this square. And there's this ingenious way I found, is to squish the... Okay, so the way I did it, okay, I was cheating. I was reading the results. So what if I repeat it like this, so that, and I think I can just use the scaling. Wow. Okay, so actually I don't really know what happened, but basically I'm repeating less in the horizontal direction, and shape, okay, this is where it becomes like really like it's not really mind-bending, Hydra, but it's really hard to explain, and actually I'm not sure exactly what it's doing, but it somehow works. It's kind of funny thing. And if we take this, the fact that we're talking about this scaling and so on, I just take this line away. It's quite like elegant that this one-liner, shape, scale, repeat, makes the chessboard. I'm quite impressed. And if you don't want the chessboard, but like the original one, like if I say like 0.3, then okay, let's put the shape back, scale back, because I want to have the perfect square. So this like alternating pattern, and I can maybe repeat it more times. So if you repeat this x and y has this like 1:2 ratio, like I'm talking about, I don't know what I'm talking about, but this 8:16, and then you have this like polka dot pattern. Like if you want like a polka dot, then that's 999, whatever. Now we talk about 9E9, so we can do that too. But this, you can also make it like this. And it's to me, it's like crazy. It's almost like math, but if you do it right, and this is also like a weird thing that in live coding, sometimes like we go with like improvisation and try to see like what happens, what leads to what. But sometimes like you want to like really carefully design things. And maybe this is more like a thing that you want to develop on a daily basis. I mean, not on the stage, but you want to like craft things like this and see what's going to happen. And then you can use this as a material. Some people, I also don't really talk about like performing on the stage in this series yet. Am I going to do it? I don't know. But basically, like some people just, code it already and, comment it out so that when they're performing, they can comment it in and, use it. That's also like one way of, I think it's like pre-coded, or I don't know what it's called, but this is one way of doing it. I personally don't do it because I'm smart, no. But I like to kind of remember these patterns, not in a way that, as I was like exploring, like I don't really like remember like function by function, but I remember these ideas. Okay, I combine this with that, and then I just recreate it on the spot. I don't do it, well, let's say on the spot, and then see what's going to happen, and it might end up with something different. It might end up complete disaster, but the good thing with Hydra is that there is no syntax error. I mean, like as long as like you're following the syntax, like even if it's like broken in a way that is, it will produce something. Like you combine things, and if the parentheses and matching and so on, then it will produce something. It may be what you want, it may be what you don't want, but what you don't want may be a good thing. So there's one last thing I want to try. So there's this funny thing with the shape that we talked about. Okay, shape 2. There's another thing that I didn't talk about, is shape 1, and this is actually like amazing thing that you should try is like this. And what is really funny about shape 1 is that normally like you don't do this, right? Like if you do like this, there's like, well, tiny triangle because there's like blurring effect. But if you do it 3, 0, 0, there's no, and maybe it's a little tiny dot, but you don't see it. And that's the same with like 2. It's a line, but it becomes thinner and thinner, and you don't see the line anymore. But with the line, with the shape 1, it's not the case that it just covers half of the space, and this is super useful. So you should definitely try. And this is another way of making this alternating like chessboard pattern actually much easier in this case, which is not in Hydra book. So you should definitely try. I think I'm inventing this now, but so if you do this, now it's repeating but without offset. And this time, because the shape is aligned in a vertical way, so I want to repeat it like this. And you see a chessboard pattern magically appearing. So this is another way of doing it. I kind of invented it now because I thought like, okay, this is possible. Again, if I do it like scaling for the dot with 1, 1, I'll just cheat it with width divided by height, something very simple version. Now, it's normal because I think, okay, I think it's the same problem with the other scale repeat thing that we just saw here, scale repeat. I think we have to do it like this or the other way around, like this, 8, 4. So it's the opposite of this one, but it's because of the decision I made that scale 1, 1, 2. If it's scale 1, 2, 1, maybe it's repeat in the same way. Anyways, whatever. So it can be actually, I was, like if it's, people do this code golf, right? Like how to make this function in a very short code. Like in P5.js, I think there are some people doing this, like tweet processing and so on like Twitter, for example, I want to make this kind of graphics in like very 140 characters to make this possible. And I mean, this is getting like super nerdy, but also this what is it called, demo scene and stuff, like how we can like fit like this crazy graphics like generating code in, I don't know, 1K of size or whatever. So it's becoming like that kind of territory. But in this example, I said they're going to shape, scale, repeat to make this pattern, but I actually noticed that shape, repeat with shape 1, actually you can make the same chessboard just with 2 functions. So I discovered something, which is great. And if you feel this video was quite boring, like always play with the color. Maybe this time I'll just change it like this. It's like, well, if it was not repeated, it can be like a Ukrainian flag. And yeah, like, but also, you can do like Karama, or like you can play with, maybe it's not so fun, but well, it's kind of cool. I have a socks like this. Anyways, so yeah, let me know how you feel about this series. I will probably like try a little bit more and see how far we can go with this topic, with like coming from Hydra book, because I spent quite some time with writing this. It was a bit long time ago, or some time ago, but there's some interesting things that are maybe neglected. So I would like to bring this up, and it might be like boring like this, but let's see how this goes. And thank you if you're following this. If you have wishes and so on, please write in the comment down below. Also, like if you have like more like complicated questions, I would suggest, I might also suggest you to direct you to Discord or Facebook group. But like feel free to use the comment down below, or you have my email in my not the description, channel information, also Mastodon, or some ways to reach out to me. So let me know. And if you are happy with this video, I appreciate if you hit like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. So I hope you have happy coding. Bye.